podcast for those who suffer, which is everyone.
It's a space where we can speak honestly about what it feels like to be in desolate places without losing hope.
Welcome to In the Thicket. We're talking about a doozy today, friends. We are talking about church politics. And just to clarify, when we're talking about church politics today, we're talking kind of about the experience of being in the church, working in the church, volunteering in the church, and then seeing kind of some of the ugly underbelly. So we're not really referring to, conservative versus liberal or things like that, which we might cover in another episode. But today we'll talk all about our experiences kind of inside the church and how we've handled times that have not been as stellar experiences, but also about some times that have been really beautiful experiences. We hope it's helpful for you.
Hey, everybody.
Hi.
Hey, guys.
Hello, I'm Erin Kinsella.
I'm Nicole Richard Williams.
And I'm Rachel D'Souza.
And we are in the
Thicket.
Oh, no.
I know. That's like kind of cheesy, but it's good. I don't know. Whatever.
It's fine.
We are in the
How
thicket. That's true.
How are you guys doing? Rachel, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm kind of like beat.
That answer was like when you say I'm doing okay, but really what wants to come out of your mouth is I'm doing everything that I don't wish to be doing in some way.
I mean, that's not true. I am doing all the things that I wish to be doing, but
Yes,
I am
just
a lot
tired
right
just
now.
a lot of those things in a
lot.
short time.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
This is, Rachel, your response is sort of on par with sometimes in the morning, my students will come in, it's like an 8 or 9 a.m. class, and how are you all doing? And they all just look at me for a second like, do we have to answer that question?
Yeah.
We don't really want to answer that question because it'll cause us to have to reflect on how we're doing, and it's not good. Like,
this
this
is exactly it. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Right now, I'm just kind of like, I'm going,
But you have like a crunch class, like / whatever.
This was last week. We had 2 classes, like we had an extra class last week. And then this week we just have a lot of reading this week, which is great. I mean, in a PhD program, it's kind of what you do. But, this week is like a lot. And so, and I'm still trying to figure out, I guess it hasn't been that long since I've moved. It's been over a month now, but I'm still trying to figure out what my routine is. Like, when do I grocery shop? When do I do laundry? Like which days of the week, what happens when? So I think that's part of what's exhausting me too. Cause it's just like, I don't have my system, my rhythm yet. So
makes a big difference.
Right.
Routine does.
Yeah.
Okay. How are you, Erin?
Oh, I'm great. Because I got a new toy that I have already talked to you ladies about. I showed you, but I will show all of those who are watching. If you are listening, what I have just held up looks like a blow dryer. However, it is indeed can you hear that at all?
Not really. Not too much.
Yeah.
ASMR.
Oh, yep. That's something.
That's not pretty.
Sounds a bit like an alien.
The opposite of ASMR.
So it is a massage gun. Oh my gosh. And this thing, it is the best. I made my mom do this on my shoulder so for those who are not familiar, sorry, my voice is just going to be shaking and it's making me crack up. For those who are not familiar, I have fibromyalgia. So I have a lot of sore muscles a lot of the time. And in particular, when I'm working on the computer stuff, it's like my right shoulder, like your shoulder blade kind of muscle there that gets super kind of like a knot in it all. So I get one of those, and this thing, I'm like, oh gosh, like I'm gonna have to actually force myself to go to bed at night, because I would prefer to not sleep and just do this to my body for the rest of my life. But anyways, that's not
amazing.
The Lord's will for my life. So I'm going to put that down right now, but
well, that's very exciting.
I'm glad you have a new massage gun thing. That's great.
Thank you. How are you, Nicole? How are you?
Doing pretty well. I'm just like plugging away at teaching, which is great, and I love it so much. And then trying to finish my PhD stuff. So this is the decision that I have right now that I'm trying to figure out is one of my papers got accepted to present at this World Federation of Neurorehabilitation Conference in Vienna, Austria in December. Which is super cool. And there's a couple colleagues who are going to come and present with me. But I have to decide if I want to present virtually from Nashville or online in person in Vienna. And there's just like a lot of pros and cons to either
I
one.
was gonna say, is there even a question about which?
But
Vienna,
because I'm
right?
trying to finish my dissertation, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And you go on an international trip and it's just the jet lag and all the time that,
Right.
you know, I could be writing, I would be there,
Yeah.
but then I would be there. So, you
Yeah,
know,
exactly,
so this is
yeah.
like, this is like a hard decision, you guys. And
Yeah.
like,
Oh
I
my
had sort of made
gosh.
up my mind not to go. And then I was second guessing it. So I'm sort of right in the middle of that decision
Okay.
right now. So
I'm not going to counsel you because I only have one. I would only go
Yeah.
one.
It's all just gonna be Vienna.
well, and I wouldn't have to pay for anything too, because I have
Oh,
funding for
girl.
stuff. So it's like, it's, you know,
We're
it's hard
holding-
to
we're
say no.
holding
It's
back
it's
real
like, do I be really responsible or I do the fun thing?
No,
That's also maybe
responsible.
responsible. So
I
anyways,
mean, well, I mean, sometimes the Lord just gives you a gift. You just have to.
oh.
I know.
So we'll
Oh
see.
my-
We'll see.
Yeah.
Anyways,
does your funding cover Nathan to go with you? That is
It does
the.
not. It
See,
does not.
That's
Okay,
the
that's
clincher
good.
right
Yeah,
there.
that's
That's the tough part.
That's a tough
Yeah.
part. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's the tough
Yeah.
part. So
Yeah. I would also like to say, Nicole, that you're you, when we were first meeting, have a tank top on today, like
Mhm.
nice. And so we can now see the stages of cold that are existing in our various places, because Nicole is in Nashville. She's got the tank top.
Mhm.
Rachel is in DC, so she's got the t-shirt.
Short sleeves, yeah.
Short sleeve t-shirt still. I am in Canada, so I'm in Ottawa. I am wearing a dress and a very fuzzy sweater. because It's starting to get real cold.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
There we
great. That's
go.
funny, actually.
It
You
is
got the
funny.
balance of
So we're
things.
going to be able to visually illustrate our global domination over the course of the podcast.
Yes. So speaking of global domination, our topic
That's a
today is
great
politics.
That is a good
Is
segue.
well, politics in the church, you know. You
Mhm.
know, when everyone
Yeah.
this is like the kind of thing where people are talking about something that's happening at their parish or in their church community or something.
Mm.
And then it's like awkward or it's difficult. And then at the end, you're like, well, politics. And then everyone's like, yeah. And but so that's what we're talking about.
That's what we're
today.
talking
Like,
about.
what
That's
is
right.
that? And it's a little hard to define, isn't it? Okay, what do we actually mean by church politics? So let's just explicate that a little bit first. So Rachel, why don't you start? When you think of the term church politics, what comes to mind?
I think about just things that are happening, ways in which like church communities or parishes that I've been a part of or communities I've been a part of are getting influenced that have nothing to do with our true purpose or goal. So like ways in which, you know, decisions about ministry are being made. And obviously I'm not talking about, there's practical things that always are a concern and those are important things. That's not what I mean. I just like that people's motivations are not really evangelization or, you know, caring for the flock or, you know, and this can be like, it could be clergy, it could be pastoral workers, it could just be like people, I don't know, like youth ministry helpers. It could be anybody, but it comes up where something's pushing us in a way that's not quite are, you know, focused or centered on like Jesus.
Which is tough, right? Because if we're, you know, if people are following, which we're all you know, guilty of this or what's the word I'm looking, vulnerable to this, but of just like following our own, this is what I think it should be. And it's not. I remember one time I was trying to get, I really wanted to see if we could get a net team at our parish. And so I went and like talked to the parish council and I talked to the priest and as I was talking to them and I was like, had made this presentation, this is why would be good. And then they kind of asked some questions and were pushing back. And so then I kept pushing back. And then finally they were just like, we're saying no. Like we're saying no. And I was just kind of like,
why?
Oh, and it was two things. One is that like, I had a strong sense of, well, this is what we need to do. This is the answer. And I was pushing it. Right. And in a sense, I was vulnerable to that of like my own agenda of, I think this is good. And maybe that it wasn't the right move for the parish for whatever reason, right? At that time. And so we're all vulnerable to that, you know, but it's tough.
True.
Yeah.
Erin, what about you?
I feel like it's so there is, I forget the name of the organization. It's like Great Parish or Wonderful Parish or something like that. But it's Patrick Lencioni, who is this guy. I think he might be from Seattle or anyways. I think he gave a talk in Vancouver or something like that that I watched with when I was at my old work, and he's excellent. So if you ever get a chance to go and look at some of his talks, he's just so good. And the thing that I love that he talks about is leadership, like leadership in a parish or whatever. So, and he tells a story about, how you have the parish council or whatever. And so you have the people on the parish council, and there's one woman who's like saying these things and these ideas or whatever. And then a typical parish council will be everybody goes out to the parking lot to their cars afterwards, and everybody talks to each other about how dumb her ideas are. And then, but nobody actually says that. So there's like, to me, if you're talking about church politics, then you're getting into the realm of darkness. And I don't want to say that like too dramatically, but I also don't actually want to say it too lightly, because I feel like there's such a beautiful and good way that discernment, discussion, dialogue, conflict, being able to point out to people when they're railroading things, or when they're, like that we should have ways of doing that. And we do have ways of doing that according to how Christianity calls us, like how Christ calls us to live and how to love each other. Like we do have these things. But to me, church politics is like what happens when we are not actually, like, it's the things that lie in the dark somewhere,
Yeah.
I think
just like a passive aggressive kind of attitude, or just a lack of humility and honest discussion kind of thing.
I like that. That's what I was just gonna say. Like, I think it is connected with humility, because on both sides of it, like your story, Nicole, like when we have like, oh, we have this idea, but like maybe it's not the direction that the parish is going in for good reasons, and we're not able to take it. Then we go home and we're like, oh my gosh, like the priest, he doesn't care about, you know what I mean? And then we start talking smack about it. And like these kinds of things, it's a failure of discipleship and a failure of humility somewhere, sometimes on our part, maybe often on our own part. So it's like, I think, it's really, humility is kind of in the center of this whole thing about church politics. Yeah.
And sometimes it's like just aggressive and not passive aggressive, like, sometimes it really is like, if you, I'm just thinking about, okay, so to make it concrete for people who are listening, like the kinds of things we were talking about, if we're talking about church politics, are, the kind of like infighting or things that might happen on parish councils, or in a church, where people have different visions of how things should go. It might be even something about how, like, there are groups that are opposed to the bishop in like weird ways, or in like disobedient ways, and kind of making a public fighting and things like that. Or it could even be like the inner workings of a diocese or a parish, for the people who work at that diocese or work at that parish, when they are treated in ways that are ungodly, or or you have people in positions of authority who are abusing their positions or things like that. And so it kind of like, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's like, those are the kind of things that are floating through my head. Does that make sense?
Definitely. Yeah, exactly. And that stuff, and part of the reason I think like we want to talk about this is because if you encounter that stuff, if you're working for the church, or if you're just a parishioner or a member of a community, sometimes we really, really like a harsh kind of smack in the face and like really disillusioning. And it can really shake up your faith sometimes, where you're like, oh, I thought if I was going to go to this person who's a representative of the church, or if I, that I was going to be comforted or helped in some way. And like, instead I'm kind of reeling from this like weird experience that I did not anticipate having. So,
and these are, we're not even talking here about any type of abuse. We're just kind of talking about like this, regular everyday personality conflicts. But even that is, can be tremendously wounding, I think, and really kind of cause people to second guess, like, wait, do I really want this church? If these are the people, right? Do I really want to be a part of this community? If this is how I'm treated and it's not with love, right? It's, it can be disillusioning. And I don't know, an example that is maybe close to my heart right now, because I'm living in the US where maternity leave is just not really a thing, is you hear about women working in parishes doing amazing work, and then they start to have children and they're basically fired. And this is like so many women have experienced this, right? And so, and it gets me all fired up and angry, because we're a church that's very like, okay, pro-life, everything, but like not fully. It's not fully pro-life, because we're not actually caring for people in practical ways, right? Even the people who are working right at the church, and how hurtful can that be, and how much is politics or money or things tied up in all of that. And maybe this is not exactly that's a whole, we could have a whole podcast episode on this, right, of like women in the church or something like that. But just illustrating that, like conflicts that happen for people who are, especially maybe folks who are involved in some way, in deep ways in their parish. It can be really difficult to navigate, and you may not want to go back. Like it may be hard to, like, where do you go from there, right?
It can be very, like, I remember, because I've been working whatever in professional ministry for like 17 years or something ridiculous like that. But I remember when I first was going to start working in the church, and I was so excited. It was like every part of me was like, this is going to be the best experience of my life, because I'm working for this, for the church. Like, we love Jesus, all of us do. We just want everybody to love Jesus. And then within a couple of months, I was like, this is a friggin' disaster and a gong show. What is happening? Like, because it was just like,
what about Jesus? Wait,
where's the Jesus? That's exactly it though. But it was so disillusioning for such a long time. And I remember in one of the positions that I was in, that it was like, I feel like I've been kind of on both ends, which is also an interesting thing, because one of the positions that I was in, it felt like I was always the one being talked about. Like, I was always the one whose motivations were suspect, or whose view of things didn't fit in with those
everyone
around me, or like all of those kind of things. And I remember having things happen, like stuff would come back to me that people had said about me, or I had snide comments that were said directly to me about like these things. And it was this experience, honestly, of evil. Like, and that's like, I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. It was an experience of evil, because I was on the end of sin. Like sin against me. And it was really difficult, but then at the same time, I've also had experiences where I've had to like repent, and really like confess that and bring that to the Lord, because I can think of a number of situations where it was like me, where there was somebody else who was either struggling, or was just, like, even if they were just like a weirdo or like whatever, where it was me, like, or like, because we can do things even like gang up on people if they're, like stuff that's not, that's just not of the Lord, that really is more of like the world. And I've heard people say it before, that like working in the church is like a far worse place to work than in like the secular world, because at least in the secular world, people are like straightforward with their stuff or whatever, and they do crap stuff, and they're just honest about why they're doing crap stuff, and it's not hidden or whatever. But in the church, it's like people do crap stuff, and then it's hidden under like this coating of sugar, like
it's like, well, in the church, we're supposed to be good and nice and holy, so we're gonna have a good, nice and holy face, but still do all the craft stuff. Whereas maybe other places, people are like, whatever, this is just
I'm gonna walk over you to get a thing. It's not personal. It's just, I'm gonna get the raise because
interesting.
And, I mean, that's not to say, I feel, I mean, I resonate, Aaron, with like, some of your experiences, but also we both have had great experiences. There's like wonderful,
that needs to be named. That needs to be named too.
There's a lot of wonderful people working in the church, and there's lots of goodness and holiness and beauty, and God is obviously like working through lots of incredible people, but because it is the church, if you encounter anyone, I think, that's not that way, and there are people that are not that way, I mean, or anyone that's like, engaging in something sinful or something. And we don't, again, we're not talking about abuse. We're just talking about kind of the everyday ways in which you can hurt someone, that is extra shocking when you're in the church and like, it's supposed to be about Jesus.
Yeah.
And you're like, what's happening? So, and I think it's important. So first of all, to acknowledge that it happens. Everyone knows that it happens. Like Nicole said at the beginning, like, oh, politics, like, it happens. But then how do we respond? Like, how do we respond to that situation? Like when you're in that situation, how do you endure it? Because sometimes it just requires endurance, right? Like you're dealing with someone who is kind of established, or someone who isn't going to go away. And you can't sort of make them go away, and I don't know, you can't. And so what do you do? How do you endure this? And how do you respond? What do you think?
Yeah. It's such a good question. And like, I think, like I found for me anyways, that probably the most important thing was making sure that I am always in that relationship with Jesus, where things are where I'm like trying to grow deeper, or like let him draw me deeper into a relationship with him. Because I know that my tendency, if somebody, especially, I mean, I am not a wallflower. Like, like anybody who knows me knows that I don't have an issue speaking up if there's something that I don't like that's happening, for good or for ill, And so I know my tendency is, if there are things like that hurt me, especially if they are very unjust, my tendency is going to be to go either on the attack and to like just railroad that person, or it's going to be to speak disparagingly about them behind their back, because I have been unjustly wounded and I need some people to know that I have been unjustly wounded. So those are my tendencies, right? But neither of those tendencies is actually Christian. Like neither of those tendencies is loving, so I have, like, I've experienced times where I've failed in those things, and those are the things that I have done. And then I've also experienced times where there's been a grace, and there's been like something that the Lord is doing. And then and so then like with his grace, I've either been able to talk to the person but it's like being, I know that growing in holiness is going to help my response not to be out of vice, and a response from virtue instead. So that's like I kind of realized that it had to be more of the Lord responding to things than me responding to things.
I like that.
Yeah. How about, it's funny because I mean, so I have not worked in the church specifically. And so I don't have a lot of the same experiences. The little sort of more immersive ministry experiences I've had, it's just been short enough that I didn't get deep into the mire of, like a little bit, but not that where it starts to affect you really deeply on a personal level. I didn't quite make it there,
Right.
So I don't know, Rachel, if you have how have you navigated that? Like, I think, Erin, what you're saying of just like being aware of what are my natural tendencies, and like being able to name those that, when you're starting to verge into that,
This is how I'm usually a jerk. That's
and as long as you know that, then that's half the battle, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then, like you say, of just like, it becomes something where, like, I love that humility of, okay, this is what I can do, and neither of these are Christian ways. So Lord, you guide me. How would you have me, and like walking with him in that. I think that's really beautiful. Rachel, I don't know. Yeah. What have you experienced?
I love that framework. So I'm going to use the same one. Like, I think my natural tendencies are not like Erin's. Actually, my natural tendencies are like, if anyone, whether it's just or unjust, if anyone criticizes me, my natural tendency is, I may not like outwardly agree with them. My natural tendency is to inwardly just kind of absorb criticism. So like, and that's coming from like, my own sort of wounds and insecurity. So I just kind of adopt that view of who I am. And then, and it like escalates my sort of panic, because I'm like, well, I don't know how to change it. And I think I'm always like, I'm like a bit of a diplomat wherever I am. So I think wherever I am, I'm always trying to sort of make everybody work together. And if that's not happening inadvertently, and this is another way you can be prideful, right? Like in a sense, I take it on myself, like, oh my gosh, like I'm failing in some kind of way. And even if someone mistreats me, my first kind of gut thing is like, okay, like and it's not that I believe them. It's just my natural kind of tendency. Like you said, I like that idea. It's like a sort of my gut, it's my knee-jerk reaction. And I have learned, it's actually been 3 years of like working in the church, that God has really helped me grow out of this. Because what happens is when you do that, I don't know if people listening can relate to this, is when you take in people's sort of negativity and make it sort of who you are, you take it, it comes out somewhere. So like for me, it'll come out with like my family, you know, where I'm like, I can't do, you know, like, you just can't help me. No one can help me, like, get away from me. And I'm just like, I become sort of some like a force of negativity some other place in my life. And so it's really bad. It's like, you know, it really, that sin really cycles out into a lot of things if you sort of let it. And so it's like, how do you sort of arrest the impact of sin where you are? And like you said, Erin, like, it can't be you. So for me, same thing, like, Lord, how would you respond? The first thing that I need.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Rachel froze. What is the first thing she needs, folks? Stay tuned. Stay tuned for this exciting
Oh, this is a long
revelation.
phrase. I'll bet she's going to drop out.
Okay. Well, we'll have to come back.
Oh.
I heard something.
Hi. Oh,
Hey, Rachel is back. Welcome back to the show,
fun.
Rachel.
that was really funny. I was like, arrest sin, and then it like just
We heard the first thing I need, and that's it. So Rachel, what is the first thing that you need?
Okay, so the first thing that I need is to know that the Lord loves me. So that's my number one move. When if somebody sort of attacks me or is unjust or whatever, it's to go sort of honestly, to go to the Eucharist, because I need that sacramental sort of affirmation. Like, yes, Jesus loves me. He is here for me.
This I know.
Yeah, exactly.
The Bible tells me so.
That's right. You know? Yeah. So that's my number one move. And then I think from there, it's also important to acknowledge, to be able to say out loud, like, that wasn't right. And that's hard for me sometimes to be like, what? Sometimes I think I'm going crazy.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
especially if it's somebody in a position of authority, right?
Exactly. You can second guess yourself so easily, right?
And that happens to me. So it helps then to talk about this with someone you know who isn't just going to be your cheerleader. Of course, you need cheerleaders, but you need someone who's also going to push back a little bit so that you know that you're getting like not just your perspective mirrored back to you, you know? So if you can have someone like that, that's really helpful. And then they can help kind of guide you to like, that seems really kind of not cool.
Yeah.
And that's been really helpful to me. Like, okay, that wasn't cool. Cool.
Yeah.
It's
validating.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and sorry, you were going to say something, Nicole?
Well, I have a last question for you guys afterwards before we start to wind down here, but go ahead, Erin.
Okay. I was going to say the things that, like, it's interesting because the Lord uses everything, right? So even with all of these things, like, part of what I found is that it's actually like having these kind of like conflicts or things like that has actually deepened my identity in him. Like, once things have like worked through, it's like he does something in that to show me that actually who I am is not defined by what my response is or what this person has done or who they think I am or it's like it's only defined by who I am in him and who I am to him. Which is like a huge gift, right? And then I think something also interesting that I found that that has come from all of these things is that it's like once there's been some processing and like going through it and things like that, and once there's been like some healing of a wound for me, then it becomes, or even like praying for the person or letting the Lord just into things, is like there starts to come like mercy in it. And then the person, instead of becoming the enemy, becomes like the walking wounded, because that they're not like doing what they're doing because they're an evil minion of the devil. Like, that's not what the case is, you know? And even something like when St. Ignatius talks about upholding the proposition, right? So like, it's like assuming the best about the person, because often in the conflict and whatever, it's like somebody has actually assumed the worst about you, about your intentions, about your motivations, about all of those kind of things. So like, the worst thing to do is reciprocate that by assuming the worst about their motivations, their intentions, like all of those kind of things. So like, upholding the proposition would be basically acknowledging that something has happened and that objectively it can be bad. So it's like offering an explanation without offering an excuse. So it doesn't excuse the behavior,
Right.
but you can think of explanations in your head for why that behavior might have been there,
Right.
Mhm.
even if they're not true, even if you're just making stuff up, like it can help you to see people in a charitable light.
It's really
Yeah.
funny, actually. It's making me think of Michael Jordan. Like, so there's a connection. The Netflix show The Last Dance, he talks about this like game, this huge game that he had at the Bulls, where he assumed, or he didn't assume. He tells the story as if this guy had personally insulted him in like this crazy, terrible way that made him so mad. And so the next game, he wanted to just pummel him. And so he scored like all of these, like he really kind of destroyed this guy in the next game. And then afterwards, you found out like he just made it up. Like the guy hadn't insulted him at all. He just like made up this insult to motivate himself to destroy this guy on the basketball court, which is a little scary and crazy, but like also weirdly a genius move, but also scary.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's kind of the opposite of that, right? Like, whether it's true or not, to kind of give that person, assign to them some better motivation than what your knee-jerk instinct is, and that will hopefully motivate you to see them in charity, but then, and I also really like the idea of praying for them, because I think like that, and through praying for someone, I mean, this is like loving your enemies, kind of basic. So easy, just love your enemies, guys. That's the answer.
It's hard for your heart to be hardened against somebody if you were praying for them. Like if you're really struggling with somebody, like praying for them every day, you can't pray for somebody and hate them at the same time. Like it just
it's so true.
You just can't,
Also, I was being sarcastic. It is really hard to love your enemies. I just want to
this is very true. Yes.
I want to clarify it.
Yeah. So okay, here's a question then for you guys before we wrap up. So why work in the church? Why be in the church if there's all of this crap? This is a conversation Nathan and I have been having, because we've just started going to a new, like a Byzantine church here. Well, it's Byzantine church. It's a priest and his wife and their 4 children, and then like 6 other people.
Nice.
So it's and we're meeting right now in like the priest and his family's home. Like we have liturgy in their dining room.
Crazy.
And it's beautiful.
Yep.
But as Nathan and I were talking about, if you were going to a large parish, you can kind of get lost into it, And if you're not, deeply involved in all of the inner workings of the parish, you avoid a lot of the politics. And in a sense, you kind of keep yourself safe and protected. When you're going to church with like 10 people, it's harder to avoid all of the different personality, like you can't. And I think I was just reflecting on this kind of as we were all talking, is okay, one of the reasons why I feel like I haven't maybe encountered as much church politics stuff is because I haven't worked as much in the church as both of you have, but also I think I know this about myself in general, that I'm pretty good at sort of remaining a little bit numb or protected or aloof from things that not being vulnerable as a form of protection. I don't want to go as deep enough, like with people. I don't want to really let people in because I don't trust them all, And so how do we reconcile the very real possibility of, the church, people in the church are not necessarily marked by perfection. Hopefully we're marked by forgiveness, and that's what makes us different. But if we go in and expect perfection, we're not going to get it. But so how do we do that? Is there still a good reason to let ourselves in, amidst all of the other demands of life? Like, I don't know. So what's your sales pitch for why we should still be involved in the church?
Working for the church or serving the church.
Yeah. You want to go first?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think first of all, it is a discernment. It is a calling. Like so first of all, by baptism, we all have a calling to evangelize, right? Like this is our mission. Everyone's on mission. We are all church. Like, and this is the other thing, like church isn't just the people who work there or the involved, kind of officially involved people. It is really all of us. So we have a calling of some kind. And then, so discerning that properly is, I think, step 1. But if you discern that and God is like, hey, you got to go talk to Father Steve and start a young adult ministry, that's like, I think it's, you can't expect perfection, but I think for me, humility comes back into it. It is kind of a school of humility, like working for the church, you will learn humility. And I think if you're kind of working for the church in any case, be like, well, is it going to be good for me? Is it going to be like fun for me? Whatever. Those may not be the right questions to ask. Not that it won't be fun, but the question to ask is like, well, how am I called to love here? And then the Lord is going to shape you in that, and it's going to be good. Like it will be beautiful and good. If you're walking with him in through that.
Yeah.
I like
I
that.
feel like it is really about the call, because I love even when you talk about the parish and people being involved at the parish, because I'm a big advocate of like, I don't think there should be anybody sitting in the pew on Sunday who does nothing in their parish. And that it doesn't mean that everybody needs to be on the parish council or everybody needs to whatever, but even if you are specifically praying for your pastors in some
That's right.
way, even if you are dropping off flowers for the thing, even if you're like whatever,
smiling
smiling,
at people.
yeah, or intentionally, yeah, that's right. Every time you go in each week, you're looking for a new person to say hello to or whatever, like who whatever, but I think like it is like the call is always worth it because it comes from the Lord, and the Lord, he is the only one who knows what is held in that call, right? Like he's not going to call anybody to work for the church if there's not some good that he is intending to bring from it, or that he will bring from it, because he works with all of us. He knows every single person on your parish council's, heart. He knows everybody. So there's always a call that he gives, and he's faithful to the call, like which is the ultimate thing. But also because there are some really, like even in the most difficult positions that I've had, there were some beautiful times. There were like some really graced moments, and it's even more in some of the difficult times where those really graced moments have been like particularly poignant because they were not coming like so frequently, or and so it was like this extra kind of affirmation from the Lord of the call to be where he had me at the time. But I think too, like that he also gives, like, I don't know, it ebbs and flows, so like if you're involved in different church stuff, whether it's your parish council or whether it's whatever, like I hope that anybody who's involved in any of these things has both of those experiences, like maybe some of the harder stuff, because it causes us to grow in virtue, and he brings good out of suffering. That's our whole podcast.
Yeah, that's
like
right.
Everything is redemptive in him,
Yeah.
But then also some of the really beautiful things, like when I was working at the Newman Center, which in Toronto at the university, which was my previous job, it was such a gift to work there with the team there, because everybody had this relationship with the Lord. We all spoke the same language. We were all heading in the same direction together. Even at the parish here, I have managed to get myself on the parish council somehow, which is funny to me. But the only reason that I was like, that I felt like I could say yes to that is because I already know most of the people on the parish council, but the whole parish council is like, everybody is a disciple who loves the Lord, and we do have the capacity to speak that same language. And so the gift there is the ability to like really, really go gung-ho, like 100% all in, and there's something beautiful about that too, when everybody is kind of the same mind, and then the Lord just can like move things really quickly. So like both are gifts,
And
that's good.
To reiterate sort of like that, we are highlighting here the hard things that can be a part of working for the church, because you almost feel like that shouldn't be there at all. But that's not to say like, I mean, the three of us met because Erin was working in campus ministry. I have some of my like deepest friendships and like people who are real disciples of Christ, priests and lay workers that are my really close friends. And I would say like family in Christ now because of working for the church. So that is all also operative all the time in different ways in the church. And I also think that there is like, this is our whole podcast, like you said, Erin, like the cross, like Jesus doesn't say the cross isn't going to be there. So when you serve the church, it also like the cross is going to be there. And if it's politics, it might be something else, and that's okay.
It's always going to be in something.
It'll be somewhere,
That's good.
So
And I think that's it's to adjust our expectations a little bit. Like, are we expecting everyone to just be all angelic and work together all perfectly? If we are, then we need to basically grow up a little bit and like just expect other humans to be humans. I tell this to my students sometimes, where I say, you might expect when you go off and graduate and go into the working world that other adults are going to act like what you imagine adults are like.
Right.
But they're not going to. And you're going to have people who act in ways that you are very shocked by because it's so unprofessional, but that's just reality. And you'll learn to navigate all of these things, like, and so totally, because humans just aren't perfect. And I mean, maybe that's like, sounds like reductionist. It's like, well, it's just humans are perfect, but maybe if we expect the cross more, then when it comes, we can be like, oh, there it is. Hello. Like, not that it makes it any easier, I think, when those things happen, but I don't know.
Yeah. That's right.
Anyway,
good.
Thanks, folks. Thanks for this chat.
Church politics.
That's
right. Church politics.
Our favorite thing. Well, I think it's time for God winks.
You have the God wink.
I have the God wink, and I'm actually sharing one that my husband told me. So I will share this that happened to him, but that I thought it was very cool. So Nathan's finishing his PhD in theology, and he's his degree's through the University of Toronto. Both of our PhDs are, but he moved down here with me for when I got this job in Nashville, and so it's been difficult for him a little bit because he's disconnected from that whole community there of other intellectuals who are also doing their PhDs, right? He's just kind of forging ahead alone, and so occasionally I think that just is tough, and he starts to like wonder like where like. You just, it's hard when you're not in it, right?
Totally.
So he had this moment the other day where he was just kind of feeling that, I think, and sort of thinking what is his place, and what's for career, and where is it all, whatever. So there's this online theology website called Syndicate. I don't know, Rachel, if you guys or both of you know it now. Basically, people can go and they post if there's like new books that have come up, and they start a forum where people can write responses and discuss like these new ideas and things that are coming out. And I guess it's for humanity. So there's one for theology, and there's one for philosophy, and there's different kind of categories. So he was looking on this, and then he was just like, I wonder who is like kind of the editor or the person in charge of the theology section, who has this job. And so he goes and clicks on it, and it's him. It's a picture of him, and it's his name and a bio of him. What? And he has no idea how it got there. No one ever approached him to talk about this. He like had signed up for like a free membership with them like a year ago. So he felt like this is just like a God wink, where the God was just reminding him like, hey, like you're still in the game here. Like this could be you. And it is. So now he's kind of like,
that's amazing.
He emailed them, and he has to figure out like, what?
Hi, I'm not editing right now. I don't know what's happening.
But now he's like, okay, well, maybe I'm going to post this book and start like actually, just like kind of do this, because apparently I'm the official editor of this whole thing. So
that's awesome.
Anyways, that's
a cool
God wink.
That's a very big God wink.
Yeah. What
right?
the heck?
Yeah.
There's like a bio and everything. It wasn't like, it isn't even just like
a bio.
Yeah. A picture. And I read the bio, and I'm like, yeah, this is like a reason accurate. Like I don't know. Neither of us have any clue of how. Well, obviously I don't.
So great.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Cool.
Anyway.
Sweet. Well,
thanks for listening, folks.
Yes. We hope that this episode didn't make you feel like, oh, Erin's starting up her.
Erin is massaging her. Yeah, I'm massaging her back now, which is good.
Yeah.
Well, folks, send us your stories if you would like to. Maybe how do you navigate this, or how has maybe a difficult moment in church politics helped you to grow or deepen something in your life?
And also, we love the church. I just feel like, I don't know why.
Yeah.
Many times we do say
the church is divine. The church is divine.
Exactly. That's right.
And we do believe that she is divine.
My last thing. Okay. I read this once, like a long time ago, and somebody was writing there, like, the amazing thing about the church is not that it's full of saints and full of, perfect people and amazing popes, particularly they're talking about popes, amazing popes who've always guided the church. They said the amazing thing is that we've had some really terrible popes but somehow the church still exists and no one has proclaimed heresy as an official teaching of the church.
That's right.
If that's not miraculous,
That's right. That's
you know,
right. Then
so,
we're
yeah.
all good. Yeah, exactly.
The Holy Spirit's still around.
Yay.
All right.
All right.
We love you,
ladies.
everybody.
Love
God
you
bless
guys. God bless you. Bye.
God bless. Bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of In the Thicket. If you like what you hear, give us a rating and hit that subscribe button. We have new episodes every Monday with more stories and honest conversations about life when the going gets rough and the hope and humor amidst it all. We'd love for you to join our community on Instagram and Facebook at In the Thicket Podcast. While you're there, let us know how we can pray for you. God bless and see you next week.